Hi everyone, my name is Gena Ortega for Genealogy Bank. Let's talk obituaries. My guess is if you've been doing research for any length of time, you've probably looked at quite a few. And I know that when I started genealogy decades ago, prior to the advent of digitized newspaper websites, that was one of the newspaper articles that we often went to because we knew the date of an ancestor's death and we could somewhat easily find it if it was available. Obituaries, no doubt, are important to our research. They can provide us information that no other record provides, but they're tricky. Obituaries have almost existed as long as newspapers, but not everyone received an obituary, and that's still true today, and it doesn't always have all the information that we would hope. Let's take a look at an obituary and talk a little bit about what we look for in an obituary and some things that we need to consider as we take in that information that it provides. We're going to go over to the Genealogy Bank website. So now we're on the Genealogy Bank website, and I went ahead and started a search for my female ancestor, Adelaide Laxton. She's on my maternal line. Now, before we get looking at her obituary, I want to say two things. One is we need to keep in mind that we never know who the informant is for an obituary. So what does that mean? We don't know who gave the information for that obituary, so we don't know how accurate it is. Now, obviously, it might have been something that a sibling or a child, an adult child, or a spouse may have given, but we don't know. And so we need to double check the information with other sources. The second thing I want to say is that typically, but not always, obituaries have a certain style. And so that style includes biographical information, it includes vital record information, family relationships, life events, such as associations or work or other activities, and then end of life events like where the burial was. Now, that doesn't mean all obituaries have that. Some are very brief, some are just a few words, some are much longer like the one we're seeing. But the point is, however the length is and however much information you gather, you still need to double check it with other sources. So let's go ahead and let's look at Adelaide's real quickly. Now, one thing I want you to notice is it's not in an obituary section. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. If you're just looking for the section of the newspaper that's labeled obituaries, there might be something in another part of the newspaper about your ancestor's death. Now, this is from the Snowflake Herald. Snowflake, Arizona is a small town in Arizona. You can see at the top it says that there are 700 people and there's 16,000 surrounding there. So maybe in the county, in the next county. So this is kind of, although front page news, it's in a more gossip column. And so it's over here, news from our correspondents. And we're going to scroll down because this actually takes up two columns. And she lived in Show Low, so it's in the Show Low section, and it says, "Gone but not forgotten. One of Show Low's oldest and choicest flowers has been plucked." And then it tells us on May 31st at 7 p.m., and I'm sorry, I'm going to scroll back up, Mrs. Adelaide Laxton passed to the great beyond. So we get all that flowery language and all that nicety. Remember, it's not labeled an obituary, but that's what this is. It's telling us names, it's telling us eventually associations, vital record information. It tells us she was born in 1833 in England. She joined the church, which is the Mormon church. This is a small Mormon community. She was baptized on 1853 and she came to the U.S. in 1861. So think about those dates. We can go ahead and write those dates, maybe on a timeline we're keeping, and we can double check that information with other sources. Maybe birth, maybe church records, maybe immigration records. Now, as it continues on, it tells a little bit about her life experience. It tells us she moved to Arizona, and that it does talk about her husband, doesn't give us a name, and says she was the mother of 9 children with no names. So that does happen. So we need to figure out that information. Now, it ends with what happened at the funeral, which is kind of unique. It talks about the hymns that were sung, who gave talks, and about her and what they said about her. And then it finally ends with what cemetery she is buried at, which once again, we could double check that and verify that. Now, that's all great information. It provides us with some nice stuff that we can add to a narrative about her life. I want to show you one more thing. Remember that obituaries aren't the only thing that you might find in the newspaper. In fact, you might find things, articles, maybe short tidbits that talk about the person prior to their death. Obviously, after their death as well, when we think about probate notices, for example. Now, here is another article from the Snowflake newspaper for April 1915. Now, remember, she was born in 1833, so she's in her 80s when she passes in 1915. This is from the same column we just looked at, but it's a different newspaper date. And so it's Sholo once again, and it says, Mrs. Adelaide Laxton has been on the sick list for several weeks. She doesn't seem to improve very fast on the account of old age. Okay, so we get a little bit that she was ill months prior to her death, and maybe we could look more into that and find her in the newspaper several times. Maybe even showing that family was coming into town because of the illness. So we need to check not just the death date, but other dates surrounding before and after the death. I hope that helped to give you an idea of some things to think about when you're looking at your ancestors' obituaries. It's not enough just to write down the information that it provides, but it really means that you have to analyze and evaluate and double check the information that you find in the obituary, whether that's with newspaper articles, original records, or even other derivative sources. Remember that obituaries provide you that extra detail that can help to tell your ancestor's story. Good luck with your research, and I hope to see you again soon.